Xbox needs to fix this ASAP. What is up, y'all? I am Ray, and this is my channel, Xbox Ready, where we get on and we talk about Xbox stuff. That is right. The latest news, rumors, games, accessories, pretty much anything I want to talk about as long as it's about Xbox in some way. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about how Xbox's past is finally catching up with them and how they're already getting back on track. You see, we are rapidly approaching the end of 2024, about to head into 2025, and it's got me doing a lot of thinking, a lot of introspection. And as a guy with an Xbox YouTube channel, a lot of that reflecting has been Xbox specific. I've been thinking a lot about what Xbox has done over the past 4 years since the launch of the Series X and S. I'm thinking back on when Xbox Ready first launched back in 2021. There was so much excitement surrounding Xbox as a brand, so much potential. Sure, we were just coming off the Xbox One generation where Xbox took a couple of L's, like in terms of their hardware sales, canceled game projects, less than stellar reception to their first-party big games. But Gen 9, we were gonna leave all that behind. We had these cool new consoles. Microsoft just went on this huge spending spree to expand Xbox game studios. They bought Bethesda, Mojang, Ninja Theory, Obsidian, Double Fine, inXile, Rare, so many other studios. Finally, it seemed that Microsoft was just gonna obliterate the haters by addressing one of the biggest criticisms leveled against Xbox, the lack of good, consistent first-party games, recent first-party games. 4 years on, have they achieved that? Thinking about that question has me wondering what Xbox is known for. You see, they used to be known for shooters, online multiplayer like with Xbox Live, but recently especially their identity has changed a lot. You think back over the past 4 years, they've had some wins, but they've had some misfires, which has me questioning, especially after I saw this article, is Xbox known for shipping broken, buggy, crappy games? Let me explain. You see, this article by Screen Rant focuses mostly on 2 games, Stalker 2 and Starfield. But when I think back on the last 4 years of being an Xbox fan, those are far and away the only 2 games that have either launched buggy or feature incomplete. Let's go to the most obvious example. Redfall launched in spring of 2023. There was no performance mode at launch. I remember walking around in certain areas and textures just straight up wouldn't load in. Getting off the boat at the beginning of that game, which is supposed to be like the step out, awesome, awe-inspiring moment, I was like, what's going on here? It looks like I'm walking through a blurry, terrible JPEG. The graphics were struggling, the performance of this game was struggling, people were constantly reporting crashes. Then a couple of months later, they launched Starfield. Now, I know, there are a lot of people that watch this channel that like Starfield. They've spent hundreds of hours in this game. But let's be honest, when it launched, it was pretty buggy, despite being marketed as one of the least buggy Bethesda games of all time. It also didn't have a performance mode. There were a lot of features that they ended up patching into free updates that definitely should have been there at launch. And overall, a game that was billed as this great journey. You were always going to be wanting to explore these new planets. For me, that concept never really materialized. Mostly, I would get to a planet being like, ooh, what's on here? Oh, nothing. Great, cool, I guess I'll just leave. And we've gotten to the point where it seems like not even updates or DLC can really revitalize interest in this game to any serious degree. Then you move on to the most recent example with Stalker 2. Now, this is a little bit different than the other 2 games that we were just talking about, because technically Stalker 2 is not a first-party Xbox game. GSC Game World is an independent studio, but Xbox poured a lot of money into the development of this game, and it was marketed as a very high-profile Day 1 Game Pass edition. Now with Stalker 2, I'm really rooting for this game because at its core, it's an amazing concept. But again, it is buggy as hell, especially during the review period. The aiming and the shooting during the review period and the launch of this game especially was just dreadful, man. This game had me questioning my whole life. Like, have I never played an FPS game before? Why am I so bad at aiming and shooting people in this game? It's making everything 10 times harder. Thank God they fixed the dead zone issues with this most recent patch. I jumped back into the game after this update went live. It signifies that the team at GSC Game World is dedicated to getting this game back on track as soon as possible. And while it's not perfect, the updates they've implemented so far have vastly improved my my experience with this game. I'm like, oh, okay, I can actually aim and shoot people, which is like 40% of the game. Makes for a lot smoother experience. Not easier experience. The game is still challenging. I'm not asking for an easy Stalker 2, but I'm asking for a fair shake. I'm not trying to have bandits or mutants glitch through a wall and suddenly appear out of nowhere, kill me. I'm not trying to deal with these quest markers not going or not giving me credit for fulfilling the quest, even though I've done everything they've asked me to. I was surprised to see, though, that the CEO of GSC Game World recently came out and did a video with IGN, clarified, hey, here's why things are so buggy right now, but also admitted that, well, one of the biggest draws, or one of the defining features of the Stalker games, it's kind of not in the game right now. Or it is, but it's not working correctly. I'm referring to the A-Life 2.0 system. Often, the game world exists only in the player's field of view. A-Life 2.0 is a simulation system for life in the zone. Factions and mutants are fighting for living space, migrating, capturing new places, or retreating to safer areas. A-Life is what makes the zone truly alive and unpredictable. The system to work properly requires a much larger area for spawn NPCs, and it requires much more memory resources. To optimize, you have a lot of things that need your resources, and you try to cut things from different directions to properly optimize the game well. But to make it work, we had to optimize some things, and they make A-Life work in many situations not as it should. Also, we created some bugs not long ago before release with NPCs spawning in the air and dropping back to the bottom. They should actually spawn in the terrain. Why it happened? I don't know. And also, we had some bugs with AI behavior. I feel like that's a pretty big system to not have working for the launch of this game. It's almost a little bit, like, I don't know, if Shadow of Mordor came out and they're like, yeah, the Nemesis system isn't exactly working right now and it's creating problems with other parts of our game. What's really getting me about this whole Stalker 2 discourse is I saw on Twitter the other day that the game director for Dishonored, he was like, man, it's because of stupid Metacritic and these like aggregate review scores that studios, developers, they make safe, boring games. Like as in the case with Stalker 2, it's got a 72 right now on Metacritic just because it's a little rough around the edges. Oh, sorry, it's not polished, boo-hoo. I'm like, what are we talking about here, man? Like, we shouldn't be punished or made fun of as fans for asking for a game that has no bugs and has all the features it's supposed to at launch. And from the reviewer side of things, what are they supposed to say? Like, yeah, this game would be really enjoyable if it didn't crash all the time, or if quests weren't bugged out, preventing me from making any progress in the game, or if my controls actually worked with the dead zone. I give it a 9 out of 10. No. What? A game's performance should absolutely be factored into the overall review, especially if it affects your enjoyment of the game. I'll throw in a couple of other examples. These games weren't buggy at launch, but they were missing very important features. Halo Infinite launched in 2021. No Forge mode, no campaign co-op, no mission replayability, limited multiplayer maps. Like, damn, I love that game, but that's the truth. Hellblade 2 to a lesser degree because, well, it was technically flawless. The game looked great from a graphical perspective, but they cut out some game mechanics from the first game and it was super short. All of this to say is that Xbox and all these other publishers, they need to stop taking fans for granted. They need to stop thinking that their games could have a Cyberpunk-like turnaround if they just try hard enough, they believe hard enough. They took the wrong lesson away from that whole Cyberpunk CD Projekt Red situation. The lesson they should have taken away from it was, oh man, Cyberpunk 2077, one of the messiest launches in game history. We should do everything in our power to avoid that situation for our game. But instead, they're like, no, let's ship the game, let's launch it, even though we know it's kind of messed up. Then, with a couple of patches, a couple of DLC, we can have a Cyberpunk level turnaround. It'll be great. These Xbox games and games from other studios and publishers, they don't have the same advantages that Cyberpunk had that allowed for that big turnaround. Cyberpunk had a unique concept, world, had a killer TV show that reignited interest in the game. They had a lot of money and talent with the team at CD Projekt Red. No, what happens more with these other games is not a Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky turnaround. What usually happens is that players play these games, they see that, oh, it's pretty buggy, or oh, it's missing certain features I was expecting. I'm gonna put this down, I'm gonna come back to it. Then, because there's so many other games on the market, they find something that they actually like and forget to come back to the buggy or feature incomplete game. Then the studios are like, oh man, like player population sharply declined. And no matter what updates or game modes that we add, it doesn't look like we're seeing an uptick in engagement like we would hope. Let's shut down the studio. I mean, Arcane Austin is a prime example of how this approach in particular could have devastating consequences. They didn't even get a chance to work on the DLC or the extra classes that they had promised us when the game launched. So Ray, you're doing a lot of whining, a lot of moaning, a lot of complaining. What can Xbox do about it? What can they do to turn this around? Well, what if I told you they're already doing it? You remember all of those studios I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this video? Well, a lot of those projects are coming out over the next like 4, 5, 6 months. Games like Indiana Jones, Avowed, South of Midnight, and we have been hearing nothing but good things about them. So you see, even if these games aren't 10 out of 10 home runs, they don't need to be. Xbox needs to make sure that they just come out the gate, they perform well, and they have all of the things that they're supposed to have at launch. Let's take a look at Avowed, because that's the one that I'm most excited for. It's coming out early 2025. The lead environmental director on this game, who spent 25 years working in games, working on some of the most iconic franchises in the industry, he says that Avowed, at this point in the cycle, it's the most confident that he's ever been in a game. He says games are really hard to make, and every experience is different. I've always felt a certain level of dread months before a game shipped. A case of the nerves, but this is the most confident I've ever been in my experience at this stage of the project. He says, I'm just overjoyed at how well everything's coming together. The team is now closing things down and fixing bugs and working on performance, and I'm going to be really proud of this game when it's available to the public. I can't wait, actually. That is super encouraging to hear. If you're like me, you're not only a big fan of Xbox, but you're a fan of fantasy RPGs. We know that this game was pushed out of 2024, not because, oh, it needed more time, we needed more time to work on it, but because of scheduling issues with other games they have going out, like Indiana Jones. But just because they didn't need the time doesn't mean they're not going to use the time. Giving Obsidian the opportunity to give this game a layer of polish, just a little bit extra. I was actually able to play a little bit of Avowed for the Gamescom event that Xbox had here in LA. I think it's going to be pretty damn good. I'm not a huge fan of the melee combat. I don't know how that in particular is going to be received, but overall, I'm thinking that when Avowed launches in 2025, it's going to be a pretty strong start for Xbox Game Studios. And also, we've been hearing a lot more about Compulsion Games South of Midnight as well. I've been seeing new clips surface online. And while I still don't have enough information to say, oh, this game looks like a banger, it's intriguing me at least, and it looks like it's performing well, it's smooth. That's 3 games that have the potential to be good, solid, base hits for Xbox going into 2025. It probably helps that those 3 games, they're a lot more linear, they're not open world, they don't have these crazy mechanics like the A-Life 2.0 system. So I imagine as a developer, it's probably a little easier to make sure that these games aren't buggy or whatever. Are any of these games going to be Xbox's savior? I don't know. Probably not. But I don't think Xbox needs a savior right now. Every time they release a first-party game, it's like, oh, it's make or break for Xbox. It's make or break for Xbox. If Starfield isn't good, what are they gonna do? If Hellblade 2 isn't good, what are they gonna do? Xbox, in my opinion, they don't need a home run right now. They don't need a savior. They just need a series of good, solid hits to get them on base. Because at the end of the day, if Xbox doesn't ship good games, then what is Xbox? At this point, they've already admitted that they've evolved beyond the console. In a world where everything is an Xbox, your phone, your iPad, the ROG Ally, a console, your PC, Xbox is no longer a console, it is the games. And they can put their games on however many devices they want, but at the end of the day, if they're not good, if they're not consistent, if people are always having trouble with them, it's not gonna matter. And while some fans are a little bit more forgiving, they're willing to stick around and work through these bugs, wait for patches, there's another good chunk of people that aren't willing to wait. And rather than playing catch up and depending on updates or DLC, Xbox needs to put out these games, launch these games. They got to come out of the gate strong. If they can do that, it's going to be better for them. It's going to be better for fans. And Xbox can once again be known for quality gaming experiences, for innovation, all the things that made fans fall in love with them in the first place. Anyways, guys, that's all the Xbox stuff I have to talk about today. Thanks so much for joining me for another edition of Xbox Ready. If you made it this far into the video, consider subscribing. Help me on my journey to 200,000 subs. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.